We're going to start by removing the cover panels on the steering column. The lower panel is held on by a pair of 5.5 millimeter screws, which is an odd size. Make sure you have that before you get started on the project. And once we separate them, there's little clips that hold the two halves of the column together. The top part pops right off in two pieces. We've removed the lower trim panel. Third screw down in the middle of the lower cover that you have to get off to pull the lower cover off. We've unhooked the immobilizer and set it aside. That just clips off. Now we've got the wires for the actual ignition switch itself that we're going to take off. We have 4 T20 Torx screws that mount the multifunction switch to the ignition switch that we're going to be replacing. The real trick to doing this job without removing the steering wheel is the Torx screw on the right side of the steering column that holds the multifunction switch to the ignition switch. We're using a T20 Torx bit and a 1/4 inch wrench to reach in there and slowly undo the screw to separate that last piece from the ignition switch. Once we have that separated, we'll be able to remove the ignition switch from the column by striking it with a chisel and either driving it around in circles or cutting a groove in the top to remove it with a screwdriver blade. We used a hammer and a little sharp chisel to catch the edge of the safety bolt and give it a little twist, and now we're unscrewing it by hand. The final screw comes up from the bottom through the ignition switch and multifunction switch. That loosened everything up enough so that you could pull the new switch out backwards away from the... Oh, don't bend that around.
You were able to pull this forward for the multifunction switch,
okay,
and you push this back a bit to clear this.
It's important when lining it up to put the key switch in. It's not just a matter of twisting the key to fit where the flat side of that receptacle's at. You have to actually have the inner receptacle turned to the correct position or everything won't slide in properly. So right now it's in the column lock position. You can tell because this big lug here is sticking out. It won't go in that way. You have to reach in with some needle nose vice grips or pliers and give that switch shaft a turn forward so that you're into the accessory position.
Moment of truth, right?
So we haven't bolted everything up yet. We've left that security bolt. We left the security bolt only partially tightened up, just in case we made a mistake and need to take everything apart again. We wouldn't have to worry about having to get it out and replace it. Although if you do break it, you can replace it with a regular bolt. It doesn't have to be a security bolt. You can put a regular bolt in there. It's not a big deal. Did you put the screws in for the steering wheel switch yet?
Not
or the
these
turn signal switch yet?
Not yet. It just everything.
There's one in the bottom.
Everything's
then
still
there's
loose.
one up here on top, and there was one on the other side that goes in sideways. I showed you taking that out. Fire it up. Let's see if this works. It never would start before with the key. We always had to use the remote starter to start it.
Oh, let's see.
Did you put the key ring security thing back on?
Yeah, that was the first thing I did. Here we go.
Oh, look at that. A successful repair. Didn't take very long.
Nope.
And we did not have to remove the steering wheel, contrary to popular opinion on the internet.
This guy right here, this screw right here that goes in through, it's a 5.5 mil to get out. A lot of people said you gotta take the steering wheel cover or steering wheel assembly off to get to it. That is not technically true, because what I did, I found out, was I had a socket with one of those adapters that go to a 1/4 inch drive to one of those Allen bits and everything for it. And my dad had the idea that I just stick that in there and slowly break it free with a 1/4 inch open end and close end wrench to break it free. Then I was able to actually scan there with 2 fingers and just spin it out. So that way you can, it's one of those 1,000 turners where it takes like 1,000 turns to get it out. But you know, if it's something you're doing in a pinch where, you know, the auto parts store is closed, you can't get the steering wheel puller. There's no doubt in my mind if the steering wheel puller I had and I used it, it would be a lot more easier. But when you're in a pinch, you gotta do what you gotta do. But other than that, it's not too simple. I just got to bolt everything back up. And this has been 2 years in the making. I just have not gotten time to do it. I am just really glad I finally got done, in case my remote start one day left me for stranded. Next thing you know, I'm calling AAA.
Thanks for watching. Have a great day.